Okay. There's one person that's going to say that. There's a human who is going to hold the people. And the link right here is the right link to the actual video channel. And I put it to the actual email. And then with my side, for the speed around the view. Okay, so we have a new talk about different kinds of products. Yeah, I've heard of it. It's going to be so that's going to be the big issue. We all going to be all here standing in the front.
Hello. Oh, hold up. It must be mic problems. Let me check what's wrong with the mic. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? What the fuck is wrong with my TV? Hello?
Wow. Okay, let's disable that. Alright, now I'm getting wicked feedback. Alright. Stop that.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
All right. Oh,
Getting
Humane. Before anything, I just want to send you a picture of me and my son.
Oh, you had congratulations.
Yeah, here you go.
I knew you were expecting, but
Yeah, here's me and the boy. It's on Twitter.
oh, on Twitter.
Yep.
When was he born?
January 11th. I mean 12th, actually. 8:30 a.m.
Wow, so yeah, that's pretty recently.
Yeah, fatherhood has hit me really hard.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, I love being a dad. When I saw him the first time, I busted out in tears.
Well, that's the appropriate reaction.
Yeah, yeah. So we're going to be talking about science. Yay!
A little bit. Yeah. So I named this episode "The Cave" because there was two things this week that I would like to talk about that are reference to the cave. So I don't know if you don't mind, I would like to take 10 minutes or so and talk about those two incidents. Although you want to start talk more about because this is something we've been trying to set up, and just our schedules have been not aligning,
Yeah,
and then there's been the drama with the other group and all that sort of thing. But
yeah.
you wanted to talk about the possibility of aliens and life on other planets, and just
In artificial intelligence.
and artificial intelligence. So possibly even going into the digital universe theory and all of that. Because that's cool stuff. That's stuff that's interesting. And so,
And I
but if
also
you don't,
believe, there's another thing I believe in. You're probably going to think I'm insane. Is the multiverse theories.
yeah, well, I mean, I don't think it's insane. There's a lot of people who believe in multiverse theory, and that's from what I understand, that's the current explanation of how we got here to most people.
Yeah,
So
like
before we get off into that tangent, I just want to mention the two topics that I was. So when I named the episode, the two things that I'd planned on talking about this week. So the first one is Donald Trump caving when it comes to the build the wall. So that's been kind of a hot button issue. It's been all over Twitter, and a bunch of people are chiming in on this and that. So it's hard. It's hard for me because some people I look up to and respect, they are criticizing Trump hardcore on this and saying, well, this just means the end of the wall. People like Ann Coulter, people like Mike Cernovich, they're saying that's the death nail in any momentum Trump had. And it looks like the wall is not going to happen. And I sincerely hope people like that are wrong. So what I'm hoping is that it will be just like what Trump and them and the Democrats agreed to, and that this is a temporary um, reinstatement of the government, just because this has been the longest government shutdown. Government shutdown's an inaccurate term for what's going on, but the government. Let's see. Um, what would be a better term? Government partial shutdown, I guess, is a better way of phrasing it. But yeah, this has been the longest it's been in history, and it seemed like he caved. Well, I mean, granted, it's a good thing that the personnel, including the Coast Guard, including you know federal agents and those sorts of things, are getting paid, and as well as regular federal workers who are essential, who were working without pay. I think this also means that the the 800,000 non-essential employees that were not working and were not getting paid, they are
well,
now
yeah, well,
on the job.
actually, there was one government facility that was getting paid, the postal service, actually.
The no, the Coast Guard was not
No,
getting
no,
paid.
the post office.
Oh, the post office. Okay.
Yeah, the postal
Well,
service.
so certain government organizations were getting paid. The military apparently had been funded. That was already agreed to. There were organizations that were left out of that, including the Coast Guard, which there was a bill that was trying to get through. It was trying to get out of the House of Representatives to be approved by the Senate. It never made it that far, and the only thing it was supposed to do was fund the Coast Guard. And Ted Cruz was talking about that in his speech, so I did catch that. But it just seems like all the momentum was behind Trump, and he let the Democrats get their way, and then there was a reopening of the government, and now he's got no leverage, which seems backward for someone who is supposedly a master negotiator, someone who's written books about the art of the deal.
Yeah.
This seems counter to that because he just let Schumer and Pelosi get their way, they are not willing to budge anything. He started off saying, nope, we're going to get that wall, we're going to get all the money. And then he started making little, um, oh, well, we'll make, little concessions here and there, and they still wouldn't budge. They wouldn't even budge an inch on their side, even so much as giving $1 towards the wall.
Yeah.
And I have heard somebody talking about a possible solution that Trump should be shooting for, and that is instead of talking about building a wall, but rather increasing funding for Border Patrol. And Border Patrol and Border Security can use that funding however they deem fit, whatever they deem as the best possible solution to help them in their efforts. That's something that the Democrats might be willing to.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they won't be willing to give the full $5 billion or the full $10 billion or however much is actually needed, but maybe they'd be willing to at least come to the table and negotiate on that. Whereas this entire time they have been completely unwilling. So it seems like to me it seems like the completely wrong move to cave in and just let them have their way. Although this wasn't a permanent opening of the government, this is only temporary, and negotiations will resume in February. And if a agreed upon budget is not reached at that time, the government will be shut down again.
I wonder what will happen with the IRS with that, because W2, because it's getting around tax season with the W2s.
Yeah. So it's possible that maybe Trump will have more leverage because taxes will be coming up, and maybe that's yeah. But usually around this time, usually January is when the government shut down, because that's what happened back in, was it 2016? I think was the last government shutdown. Happened around January, and it happened for it wasn't very long. This one was over 30 days. From December to January, I think like 27th or something like that. I don't know the exact numbers there, but that just seems
counterintuitive.
Yeah, I would like to think that there's a method to the madness, and there's something I don't know, and it's possible that when that, because some people have suggested that it's possible that Trump is only agreed to reopen the government so that way the military and all law enforcement were being fully paid and had guarantee of pay in the future, and it was possible that in regards to the border he might declare this a national emergency, in which case he could use the military and all the people under his authority under as the chief executive, using them to build the wall. That seems like that would be. It's not unprecedented, as in it wouldn't be the first time somebody in recent history has overstepped their bounds or whatever, has used their executive authority to put things, basically do things that the legislative has disapproves of, and that sort of. The problem is it's not unprecedented, but to the extent that he would have to go to for this would be unprecedented, and it would be a vast expansion of executive power, or at least the use of executive power. Because if Trump does this as a Republican president, you better believe that a Democrat comes into office, well, they're going to say, well, Trump did this, and this was his party was behind him and all that sort of thing. They're going to call national emergencies on healthcare, and then they're going to use the executive power, executive branch to crack down on, on private insurance and private companies and make it all. So, and they can say, hey, this is a national emergency. They're going to start claiming everything as a national emergency. Oh, there's poverty rates, and that increases crime. That's a national emergency, and then they're going to. It is a dangerous, slippery slope, because once you wield that power for one thing, you have to understand that, oh, well, if you wielded it for something that you thought was good, your enemy or the people that you oppose can also wield that same power, and they're going to wield it to do the things that you don't think are good.
It's a double edged.
That's not to wield that power at all, and make sure that nobody has access to that power.
Yeah, it's a double edged sword.
Yes. So that was the one cave that happened this week, and then the second cave is a reference to Mike Cernovich's Hoaxed film that came out officially this week. Now, I saw this film back in July in an earlier version of it. From what I understand, the entire film is pretty much intact as it was back when I first saw it. Although he did have there were some technical bugs, like so there was people standing in front of a green screen, and the green screen was just green. There was nothing behind it. There was video clips where it was they had the audio recorded where someone was reading off of a script, and they were supposed to show something in the background, some kind of like montage of footage, and instead of that, it just had a black screen with a little bit of text that says "insert footage of blah blah blah" here. So it was, but it was most of the way done. It was like 88. I saw the 80% rough cut of it, but the ending of that film is Stefan Monolu talking about Plato's cave analogy, and I mean, the film is excellent. If you get a chance to see it, I highly recommend it. Although I think the only way to watch it at the moment is you do have to pay for it. I'll rent it temporarily, or I don't know if it's how much it costs. I haven't checked into it myself.
What's the
I
name
know
of the movie?
I haven't had the time, and it's kind of like, well, eventually I'll get around to watching the full cut of the film, but
What's the movie called?
it's called Hoaxed.
Hoaxed. Okay.
Yeah. So it's got Scott Adams, it's got Cassie J, Tim Pool, Luke Radowski. I think that's how you pronounce his last name, Radowski. Let's see, I'm trying to think of who else was interviewed in there. Lauren Southern, Alex Jones, a lot of. So the entire premise of the film was about people. I mean, a lot of these people are independent reporters um, or documentary filmmakers who have been what's the word? They've been misrepresented in mainstream media. Oh, Jordan Peterson was also one of the members, one of the people in the film.
Misrepresented and ostracized, basically.
Yeah, yeah. People like, oh, they claim Jordan Peterson was a Nazi. They talk about the Kathy Newman interview. He starts off the film talking about his own experience, where he was reporting on what was then called Pizzagate, and mainstream media was criticizing Cernovich for what he was reporting and blaming the guy who went in and shot up the place. They were blaming that on Cernovich, and he points to examples on the other side where people were calling Republicans racist Nazis, and then that one guy went around and shot up the Republican senators at the baseball game, and he was like, yeah. So there's one incident where a guy goes in and shoots up a pizza place. No one is hurt. The property is damaged, and yeah, you can blame that on all the people who were reporting on it at the time, but there was people reporting, the opposite. Like, I mean, they were pointing. The other side got to point at Republicans and saying how they were all evil and they want all black people to be killed and all that sort of things. And then some crazy guy goes and shoots people and kills people, and then the media says, oh no, we're blameless. It's pointing out the double standard is one of those things that a lot of people who are following this already know. A lot of these stories, a lot of these incidents, the whole Cassie J incident, where she was a hardcore feminist. She was, making documentaries. You saw her previous stuff, and it was when she started looking into the MRAs and she started making a film. Not that was a film that wasn't pro MRA, but she was trying to, she thought they were hate groups and they were spreading lies and all that sort of thing. And she started investigating and talking to them and started realizing, oh, wait, maybe I had this all wrong, and that's why she changed the name of her film and the whole course of her project. Her documentary ended up coming out with, it's called The Red Pill, which has been a term that has been synonymous with people who have come to that started off being leftist or liberals, or that have come to understand, oh, the world isn't the way I thought it was, and they change their mindset, and then they become more conservative or libertarian.
I'll
That's a
tell you,
trend I've seen
I mean,
repeatedly. Yep.
it's an old saying that goes, when you're young, you think more of a Democrat. When you get older, you start to think more of a Republican.
Yeah, and that's a famous Reagan quote where he said, "If you're young and you're not a Democrat, you have no heart, and if you're old and you're not a Republican, you have no brain." That's
Yep.
um,
And third party voters, you're just insane.
yeah. So I don't know where I fall because I started off a Republican, so I guess I have no heart. And then as I got older, I went completely. I didn't go left. I went as far right as I could possibly go.
Hey, I'll be honest.
So
When I was young, I was Democrat. When I got older, I became more third party because I went full Republican. I would. I've seen how stupid Republicans can be and stupid Democrats can be. So I choose the third party because hell, we're getting. They want to legalize weed.
okay, well, I mean, I'm for the legalization of all drugs, not just weed, but any kind of substance, because it's your choice in that matter. As long as your choice doesn't lead to the um, violation of another person,
Yeah.
then yeah, go ahead. If you want to ruin your life by taking meth, then you ruin your life. But the second your meth addiction starts to become a burden on other people, that's where it becomes a problem. When your meth addiction leads you to rob or or attack people or steal from people, yeah, yeah, you're done. That's so. But I would much rather have like so I've been, I don't know if you know about this with Portugal. They decriminalized any type of narcotic, and they actually have government programs where all, instead of cracking down like we currently do with our our law enforcement, they instead took that funding and invested it into rehabilitate. Man, I can't say this word.
Rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation centers. Yes, I can say the word. I just don't know. Yeah, rehabilitation centers. Um, and they've actually, the number of people who are addicted to substances has drastically been reduced. And this Portugal is the example that a lot of libertarians go to when they're talking about legalization of marijuana as well as other product. And it just makes sense if companies can make a profit off of making narcotics, then they would make narcotics, and then but the big thing is right now things like well, meth is terrible for you. Acid will it drains your spinal fluid. Meth will eat holes in your heart. Or is that cocaine? No, yeah, meth. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of side effects. But
I
if
know.
all narcotics were decriminalized, you'd have pharmaceutical companies coming up with compounds that have the effect of inducing highs, but without all the side effects.
Yeah.
Because if you're a if you're Procter and Gamble, although we talked about them kind of last week through the Gillette ads, but if you're Procter and Gamble or you're one of these major drug companies, you can make a product that gives somebody a high without the negative effects, then people will flock to that product.
Oh God, yeah. Put cocaine back in Coca-Cola again.
Yeah, that's yeah. If you got a way of making it suitable, like I mean, because caffeine is a drug, but alcohol is a drug, and
So
yet
don't forget about
it's
nicotine.
yeah, nicotine. I mean, these are all drugs that people use on the regular, and with nicotine, you can actually. Well, this is something like I was talking about the vaping, because we've had a conversation about
Oh
this
yeah.
before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm actually waiting for my coupon for my free vape unit to come in because I
yeah,
checked it out online and got there's this vape thing that has cartridges that could be different flavors like watermelon, grape. Sounds good. And
it
sugar
might be.
180, my favorite.
And give me a second here. That reminds me, because I don't think I sent off the link to my brother. So I was going to do that real fast. If he is available. I'm not sure if he is available Wednesdays, but
I have some more baby pictures to show you. Here's grandma, and here's grandma for my mom, now grandma with the baby.
yeah, so I'll send him a link because I was just about to talk about my brother. He started using vape. Oh, man, the glare from that light is pretty terrible. Sorry about that. Yeah. So I got him a vape for Christmas a couple of years ago, like 3 years ago, and now he's gotten to the point where he makes his own liquid,
Oh,
and he can control the amount of nicotine that's in the vape. So he's got full control over that, and he's drastically reduced his nicotine intake compared to cigarettes. Because I don't remember, he was smoking like a pack every 2 days or something like that, and then he started off with a pretty high concentration of nicotine in his vapes, and now it is mostly just the flavored liquid, and then a small amount of nicotine.
a pinch, basically.
So that's something you can do when you're in control of it, and that's something if you're thinking about everybody who talks about meth and heroin and all these heavier drugs and acid, and it's like, yeah, you can take an aspirin that is still a drug, but it's drastically reduced, and so you're talking about, you don't think pharmaceuticals companies would do research and like, okay, we want to create a drug that is safe to use but has these effects. I mean, if you just watch like a regular, you know,
Let me put it.
like one of those depression medications, look at all the side effects they're talking about. It's like, oh, it may increase risk of suicide, may increase violent behavior, and you're like, that's perfectly fine and it's acceptable, and you're like,
When I was on,
they do.
I'll be honest. When I was on a psych drug called Topamax, it decreased my sex drive a lot. Yeah,
Okay.
look at these look at all these pill commercials that we get. Constipation, diarrhea.
Yeah. I mean, so they understand that there's side effects to these things, and if they could create those same products without the side effects, they would. And this is something that company A creates a product that has, it solves X problem, and then it has Y side effects. And
And
then company B comes along, and they've got a product that solves X symptoms or whatever, X problem, and has less problems or has less side effects. Well, company B is going to take company A's market share.
I think this is what we were talking about in before Christmas with the cancer cure.
Yeah, if you've got that product and you can claim that you can prove that your product has less side effects, people will start using that. So with the legalization of drugs, it makes sense that you'd have everybody producing cocaine as it is right now. And then you'd have one company that creates like the cocaine without side effects,
And that's what I think
or less addictive cocaine, and then that becomes the norm for the industry, and then everybody else kind of changes what they're selling, their version of cocaine to get less and less addictive and less side effects. It becomes a race to who can provide the best possible product with the least amount of side effects.
That's what I think they did with marijuana with CBC oil.
Oh yeah, that's what's going on right now. CBC, like there's companies that sell just CBC oil, which is legal in all 50 states, even
And
though it's a byproduct of cannabis.
yeah, and then the other thing is they made edibles and stuff, which is really good.
Yeah, and the CBC oils have no hallucinogenic effects. They are completely separated from the THC, which is what causes the psychosis. I don't know. That's not the right word.
Yeah, and
Psychedelic effects is that's probably the.
And the thing is with marijuana, it was saved for government because look at the sales. Look what happened with the sales of Doritos, Cheetos, and all that stuff when you get.
Yeah, I don't think that's quite enough of a market to save the government. Anyway, okay.
It's a joke.
Yeah, okay. So the reason I was talking about hoaxed was at the end of the film, Stefan Monalou delivers a brilliant delivery of an explanation of Plato's The Cave, and I just figured both of those things kind of went hand in hand. But so if you, yeah, anybody who gets a chance, anybody who's listening to this, if you get a chance to watch that documentary, um, I highly recommend it. I know that there's like a 10-minute preview that you can watch for free. Uh, but yeah, that's and if you're not familiar with Plato's The Cave, I suggest you read it I mean, there's a bunch of people who have lectures on it or have talked about it, and actually Stefan Monalou has probably done 2 or 3 podcasts where he mentions the cave, and that's kind of why Cernovich had him doing that in the film, um, because he's really good at it. I don't know if you've ever heard him do an audiobook, but he's really good at I guess what's the word, dramatic reading. So worth checking out. Okay, so that's everything I wanted to talk about. Now we can talk about science stuff or whatever it is
Yeah.
that you would like to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
I
Like
just wanted.
one thing I'm going to be talking about is something that we're both into, the multiverse theory. I always find that quite interesting because, in my opinion, the multiverse theory would be the greatest thing ever in my personal thing. Because hold on,
It sounds cool, although I don't think it's probable. I don't think it is. It's a cool idea and it's a cool theory, but first of all, it's not provable because even if there are other universes, we can't enter those other universes.
yeah, and
I
the
mean,
whole thing with the Mandela effect with the Bernstein Bears and the different sayings and that,
yeah, no, that's just people being dumb. That's
uh, or, or or a cognitive dissonance, I would say.
I would say that's people. What that is people being misinformed and thinking something was one way, and then they go back and check, and they're like, "Oh, well, I guess it was the other way." But I remember it being so. This happens not just in major events. This happens. This is just how human memory works because you can interview 5 people who all saw the same incident, and you'll get 5 different stories, even though all 5 of them were standing there and witnessing the exact same thing. That's why eyewitness testimony is not reliable in a court case. Because some people will say, "Oh yeah, I remember it was a green Buick," and then somebody else will say, "No, it was a red SUV." And I'm like, that's and
Yeah.
yeah.
Or
So you're like,
or one
yeah,
person would say it's a black and white semi truck.
yeah. You'll get because it's it's usually things that aren't all that um, significant to you. You don't really remember that clearly, and so then when you try to recall it, you get a vague blur of what did happen, and so then your mind kind of fills in the pieces, and you're like, oh well, that fits, that makes sense, and so someone will insert your mind will basically insert false memories because
Yeah.
it didn't bother to store that stuff. It's like, that's inconsequential. Your mind is very good at filtering out things that aren't important to you, which
Oh,
is
believe
why
me. That's why in dreams you dream about a certain situation
yeah,
and you feel like you're in that certain situation, but it's not really that situation. You ever
yeah,
get
well,
that
one
day?
of the best examples of this is I don't know if you've known somebody who has cats or pets, and you walk into their house, and that's the first thing you smell, and it's just overwhelming, the pet odor, and you ask them how they can stand it, and they're like, "What smell?" Or somebody has a smoke detector that they haven't replaced the battery on, and then every couple of minutes you hear the beep,
Oh yeah.
beep, and then you're like, "How do you stand that?" And they're like, "Stand what?" And you're like, the beeping, and they're like, "Oh, that's been there. That's been doing that for months."
Yeah,
And you're
that's how
like,
when I remember when I first moved to my studio apartment.
mm-hmm,
It was so strange and it's like after a couple months I got used to the everything in there. When I have a guest over there, my ex at the time,
mm-hmm.
she's like, "How can you stand this stuff?" I'm like, "What stuff?" Like, how can you stand the window being your windows in the house being cracked a little bit with cold air coming in? How can you stand the heater going clank, clank, clank? And how you know different sounds in here? I'm like, I've adapted so well to this place. I know
Mm-hmm.
every sound. everything in this apartment, and if something doesn't sound right, then I'll investigate.
Yeah, your mind is very good at filtering out what it considers useless information.
Yeah,
Things you're like, okay, that's not important to me. That's not important to my survival. That's not important to my health. Ignore, 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 ignore. Your brain actively filters out things that aren't important to you.
yeah.
So there's another effect. What is that called? I don't remember what it is. So maybe you remember what it is. So there's a phenomenon where you hear about a term or some kind of it's a term or some kind of fact or some kind of incident, and you're like, well, I've never heard that before, and then you start seeing it everywhere. Or you like, oh, well,
Oh,
Tesla, I've never heard of a Tesla before, and then you start seeing Teslas all over the road, and you're like, how did I miss all of it? They're everywhere. I forget what that phenomenon is called.
not deja vu. I know that.
No,
We can look it up together.
let's see.
Yeah, I know what phenomenon you're talking about.
Let's see if I can find that out real fast. It's just gonna bug me.
Same here. Same here.
Oh, okay. That didn't take the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon.
Oh, I know
Yeah,
that one.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So this is the funny thing is this term actually kind of it fits its own. It's one of those weird phenomenons that it's inclusive because now you hear the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, and I'm guessing over the next few days you're gonna hear it again, and you're like, what? Who talks about this, and why am I hearing it again? And you're like, it's one of those things like you'll
like
start to hear it.
yeah, and I know how it is because everybody, like most of my friends, they're anime nerds and they like Dragon Ball. I'm like, that
Mhm.
new Dragon. They say there's a new Dragon Ball series. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. There's
Yeah.
a new Dragon Ball series. I heard that so many times. It's lying. And I see everybody posting about this stuff. I'm like, oh God. Then I watch it. It's totally sucked in my opinion. But everybody will say, "Oh, you're just a hater and shit." I'm like, "Oh, fuck that shit."
Okay, and so I think we got a little sidetracked. So we're talking about so that's how kind of the human mind warps its own reality. That's something Jordan Peterson talks about a lot. Is how you perceive the world is based on what's important to you, what you're focusing on. So, uh, so while some things may be true, they're not important, and so your brain filters them out. Or while something might be really important to one person, and they're trying to get the truth about something, and to everybody else, it's inconsequential, and so everybody else is ignoring it. And you can devote your entire life to the study of different species of ants, and everybody else will be like, "Who cares? They're ants. It's not important." And yet, for somebody else, that's their entire life, and they understand all the little intricate details about what differences this species from that species. It's just because it's not important to anybody else. Like, yep, just it's a fire ant or it's a regular ant. Either way, they get squashed. That's
Yeah,
everybody else's mindset is inconsequential. You've got other stuff that's more of a focus, and so even though you could learn these things, you filter them out. Your brain just kind of does a memory dump, and
yeah,
which is if you're a eyewitness to a crime scene or to a crime, if it's not something that's happening directly to you, you tend to kind of do the same memory dump, and it's like, well, you may retain parts of the memory, but it's not as significant as something that happens directly to you. When something happens directly to you, you remember it like very vividly. You can go back to traumatic events in your past, and I mean, as long as you're not actively um, trying to shove it down and ignore it, you can remember them as if they'd happened like a couple of minutes ago or even just
Oh
the
yeah,
day before. They stand
yeah.
out in your mind as significant.
It's like my dad. He knows every type of car, truck, SUV, and he knows it by the engines, the color, what type of engine
Hmm.
they have. And the thing is, it's like useless because I don't drive. But every time when I go out to the bus and wait with my fiance, she's like, "When the bus is coming? When the bus is coming?" And I'm listening for the bus's engine because the bus runs on a diesel engine, and my
Hmm.
dad taught me the purr of the diesel engine. I'm like, God damn it, Dad, I love you, but why do you have to give me all that information about types of engines?
Yeah, okay. And so going back to the multiverse theory, because you started talking about the Mandela effect, and
Yeah,
it's the idea of phasing between different universes. And so you
yeah,
may have started off in one universe and then ended up in a different universe where things are slightly different, but they're so similar the differences don't quite matter. Now, I think the Mandela effect is more along the lines of faulty memory. People
or optical,
remembering things that didn't actually happen. That's because their brain fills in the gaps and is like, yeah, just, I remember doing it, and
or
then
it could be an optical illusion.
yeah, I would say it's more along the lines of people not paying enough attention to things that were kind of insignificant, and then when something's brought to their attention, they're like, wait, no, that's not the case. I remember it being one way, and you're like, but you can't have remembered it being that one way. So to me, that is more of a case of faulty memory rather than
Everybody
the
remembers.
universe actually changing.
Here's a good one. How people perceived this as a Mandela effect cause. In Empire Strikes Back, the line is, "No, I am your father," instead of "Luke, I am your father."
Yeah, that's it goes back to a misquote. There's a whole bunch of movies that are actually misquoted, and then they just keep getting misquoted. So yeah, that's something else. That's another phenomenon where
Yeah,
something is misquoted or misattributed, and then people keep spreading the and then that becomes what people remember rather than what actually happened.
yeah,
Um, because there's a lot of quotes that are attributed to Mark Twain,
yeah.
and he wasn't the original one who said them. But people are like, oh yeah, that's a quote from Mark Twain. I'm like, no, it's not. Look it up. Look up the original guy who said it. It's not Mark Twain at all. Mark has nothing to do with him. I don't know why it's attributed to him. Or
Yeah, a
people
lot
will
of
attribute
people.
quotes to Abraham Lincoln that Abraham Lincoln never said, and there's no record of him saying. And you're like,
One of those famous Mark Twain quotes I know that's not his is the one with the only true animal is man himself.
hmm,
Yeah. The thing about the only animal that would do evil is man. And the thing is, that's not a Mark Twain quote, everybody. I'm going to tell
it
you that
isn't.
Mark
It
Twain
doesn't. Yeah,
Mark Twain found these quotes and uses them in his life. Don't accredit it to him.
yeah. The other thing is, Mark Twain was mostly known for humorous quotes. Like, yeah, there's
Yeah,
lies, damn lies, and statistics. Of like that's funny and profound, and like those are the things you remember from him.
yeah.
Like, okay, so yeah, I think the Mandela effect is more plausibly explained with faulty memory or faulty attribution
Or missing.
than actual being multiple universes that are merging or passing through one another. Although the when you get into quantum mechanics, they're talking about particles phasing into and out of existence, and they do this all the time. Now, that doesn't seem possible because basically that's saying matter is coming into and leaving our universe. We don't know where it's going. It could be going to another universe. And from what quantum physicists are saying, is that matter spends less time in this universe than it does. So basically, all the particles that make up you are here less often than they are not. Right. Wait, maybe that's the better, not the right way of saying that. is all of the atoms are here less often than they are not here.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the same way of saying it. What's a better way of phrasing it? Is your particles are more likely not to be here than they are to be here.
Yeah.
That seems absurd to me. That's
Yeah. And it can be attributed to many things. Like when we get older, certain parts of our body, like our skin, sheds off, and skin is particles basically. And when that skin
yeah.
sheds, it disintegrates. And a lot of people will define that as our particles dissipating.
Well, that's not quite the same thing because or at least that's something different. That's something. What is that? The story of Odysseus, or what? It's attributed to Odysseus. Sometimes it's Ulysses, but he's taught. It's basically this old, not really a riddle, but I guess that's the closest thing we can get to it, where he's talking about he's rebuilding his ship, and over the course of 7 years, every plank of wood from his original ship has been replaced with new wood, and is it still the same ship? And
That's
yet that's what happens to your body every 7 years. Every atom that makes up your body is replaced with a new atom. So are you still the same you 7 years later?
a paradox right there.
Yeah.
That's the Odysseus paradox, the ship paradox.
Yeah.
That's another
And
paradox.
the thing is you retain a memory of the previous you, although your parts are being replaced. Now, with a ship, it's a little harder to tell because a ship doesn't have a memory. A ship is an inanimate object and it can't think for itself. Whereas your body, on the other hand, even though it's taking in new nutrients and new atoms and making those inorganic materials a part of its organic structure, it's incorporating that into itself. Like that's what our bodies do when we consume food and stuff. It takes those particles, breaks them down, and makes them a part of our body, and then they become so they're us now. The collective us. That's a weird thing. It's like we are, even though
The old
so
saying of "we are
yeah
legion."
yeah the human body is a collection of cellular minds. So even though humans are not a hive mind with other humans, we are similar to a hive mind within our own cellular structures.
Yep.
That's bizarre to think about. Is every single cell in your body has its own mind, basically, its own central processing center, similar to the way your brain is a huge cluster of cells that do nothing but think, but each cell in your body has its own. It acts independently and yet towards a common purpose.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you
Yeah,
completely.
which is, I don't know much about cancer. I haven't done a whole lot of research, but it makes sense to me. When I think about it, it's your cancer cells are your cells within your body revolting against your body. This is like, so that we'll get into the alien topic sort of here because this is kind of interesting.
Yeah, because the
If an
parasite.
alien species came to the Earth, perhaps they would think of the Earth as a whole, as one organic unit, and they would see the majority of people working together, and they would see some people working to the detriment of others. These would be your murderers, rapists, and they would view that as the same way that we would view cancer within our bodies. Like if you're viewing the entire planet as one whole unit, and you see one group attacking others and destroying them and negating and killing the planet or killing the society as a whole, you're like, oh, well, that's the same thing. Like if you're looking at a human body and you're seeing cells rebelling against other cells and actively attacking them and destroying them, you would see that the same as cancer. And
or a foreign entity in your body be a parasite.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I was thinking there are other like autoimmune diseases where your immune system will go overboard and start attacking your body, thinking it
Yeah.
is some kind of invader. Or
Yeah.
and if you're comparing that to human society as a whole, that could be very much comparable to uh, abuse of authority, or like a totalitarian dictatorship or something along those lines, where the people, like the system that is supposed to be protecting people, is the one abusing them.
Yeah.
And if some alien entity was looking from the outside looking in, they might see, police brutality the same way that we view our white blood cells attacking our organs.
Mhm.
To them, they may not notice the difference. So because we're kind of in the middle, and we think about ourselves as being, because we're human, so we kind of prioritize human over other over other organisms. But some kind of alien entity that isn't human, looking at the entire Earth and just studying it as a whole, they wouldn't necessarily be able to distinguish between these different organisms. And so maybe they might see, like, okay, this particular organism is attacking this other one, so they're not the same thing. They might look at, they might look at us as if our
Yeah.
behavior determines what we are, rather than our physical makeup. So
And no wonder why
it's a matter of perspective.
no wonder why those aliens abduct people and give them those anal probes. They're just checking if they're the cancer cells or something. We're going to shove this up your ass, and you're not a cancer cell. Okay, we'll just wipe your mind and throw you back onto your butt naked
Well,
in all Times Square.
I mean, so I don't personally think that aliens are abducting people, but if you think about it, what do we do with animals, like mice and rabbits, and we take them and experiment on them, and how is that any different of an experience than, say, some alien race coming to Earth and doing the same thing with us? Like, what's going through a rat's mind when it's lifted out of its cage by some, it doesn't know what's going on. It can't tell where it's going, or what's, like, hey, something's got me and it's pulling me out of my home, and it's pulling me away from my friends and family, and there's bright lights, and then someone smearing makeup on me, or pouring pouring chemicals into my eyes.
The other thing is, I think if the aliens are just tagging people, like how we tag sharks and dolphins.
Yeah, so I've seen the documentaries on that and heard people talking about that. So supposedly there are not tags as in what we would recognize as tags, but people are finding
Foreign metal.
odd particle, or I guess odd structures underneath their skin.
Yeah.
And when they take them out, they're like similar in structure to carbon nanotubes, which I don't know. So
Yeah, and there's
since
a
the
thing
people
that's
making these documentaries are they're out there, open-minded, thinking there are aliens, they're trying to prove aliens.
I know that doctor's name who did surgery on them.
Yeah, and they take out these little, looks like nothing, and they analyze them under microscopes, and they're trying to figure out what it is. But considering that it's made out of matter that you could find here on Earth, there's nothing alien in their origin, and it could just be something that your body, was trying to get rid of, or it's just carbon, and maybe carbon formed in a structure that your body couldn't do anything with, and it just kind of sits there underneath your skin. Your body's like, well, it's stuck there now. We can't do anything about it.
His name was
It's in a
Doctor.
format we can't separate the bonds. We can't do anything with it. It's just there. So maybe it's a byproduct of of your natural
Dr.
body
David
chemistry.
Jacobs. You heard of Dr. Jacobs, right? The famous guy who did those surgeries.
I think that is the name. Yeah, I don't remember. I know that there was a documentary on Netflix. I started watching it, and I was like, no, this is Sorry, guys. You're stretching it too far. It reminds me of the Ancient Aliens guy. Only the Ancient Alien guy is at least entertaining when he goes off and it's like, we can't explain this, therefore aliens. You're like, no, that's not how logic works. It's not the we can't explain it, so aliens must be the only explanation. That's not how we figure out the truth.
Yeah,
That's how
but do you think there's life on other planets?
I would say, given the number of planets in the solar system, the probability of life forms somewhere else in this universe,
Now remember.
I would say it is highly unlikely that we are alone in this universe. However, the caveat of that is we are so far away from any other planet that is likely to have life on it. We are not likely to interact with them. If there
We
are
do know there was
aliens,
life. We do know there was alien life on Mars, actually.
That's
Bacteria, basically.
about alien life on Mars. That's I haven't seen enough evidence to convince me of that.
I'll show you the article, actually.
Okay, yeah, link an article in the. Oh, I haven't been paying attention to the chat.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I do that every time. I pull out the pop-up chat and then ignore it for the rest of the stream. I have a bad tendency of that. Sorry about that. So let me make sure I'm not missing anything important in the chat because I haven't been looking at it. Okay, so there was the can't hear me. So thanks for helping me get that. Now I got my mic working.
Yeah, there was a thing that they found on Mars. It had like it was fossilized, basically.
Oh, let's see. Okay. Hegelian dialect? Not sure what that is in reference to.
Alien dialect, I think that's basically how what we say is, what's that called? Oh, God, fart. So I know what that's called. Dialect. Shit. What's that called?
Huh.
Oh, language.
So this is talking about
I do a lot of research on aliens and stuff. One of my favorite things, actually. No wonder why you think I'm crazy, Humane.
I don't think you're crazy.
No, it's a joke.
Oh. Let's see.
Oh, here we go.
So let's see.
I'm gonna link this to you in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, they found. Here we go. They found ancient sea fossils.
Fossils.
Yep. Oh, the face on Mars. That one. Actually, that's kind of funny. I know what ANCAP Kitty's talking about, the face on Mars.
Yeah, I am not familiar with it. So let's see.
Oh, I'll send you a picture of it, actually.
Okay.
Even though it's not, it's more of a hill that actually looks like a face, actually, from how far it is.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Humanoid statue on the planet?
She's talking about the face on Mars. There it is, right there on Discovery.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm reading ANCAP Kitty. So Hegelian dialect is the way the media propagandizes. Ah. I am not familiar with that term, so I gotta look into that. I brought it up and looking at the Wikipedia, but I think it's a little too in depth for me to try to focus on while having these other conversations. But I am gonna look into that. That's pretty interesting.
Oh yeah.
Face on Mars thing. Oh,
I'll actually find a picture of it to send you.
that's something I will have to look into as well.
You know what? I'll send you a picture of it actually.
Okay, so here's where they say fossil-like object as opposed to an actual fossil.
And this was taken. This photo here from the one with the face on it was taken by the Viking 1 spacecraft.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
So
God.
Kitty is elaborating a little bit more. So problem, reaction, solution. Yeah, unfortunately, that's a huge part of our political landscape right now.
Well, I sent you the picture via Twitter, the face on Mars. That was the photo taken by the Viking spacecraft in I think it was in the 1970s actually.
Oh wait, what is this? This is not.
1976. That was the face on Mars.
Oh, I was about to say this YouTube video. Yeah. It's like that was digital. That was not.
Yeah. Well, I have a picture of the face of the original Viking spacecraft photos. Not the actual picture.
Yeah, this video is looking like a bunch of nonsense. But
Yeah, there's a documentary on it that I used to watch when I was a kid. It was called
what?
The Monument of Mars. Actually, I'll look it up for you.
That's not a face.
Yeah. I know that, but I'm gonna send you the video on it because I think you might have a good laugh at that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was called The Monument of Mars.
Hmm.
It was a video actually,
Hmm.
and it was
Well, as far as I know, there is no credible proof of life on Mars. And the most they've ever been able to come up with is amino acids, which are the building blocks for life as we know it. But what they had found on Mars wasn't actually replicating replicators, which is required for life. That's the amino acids by themselves are not proof of life.
yeah,
You have to have RNA and DNA, which you're
and
talking.
and this book
Okay.
called The Monument of Mars is by Richard Hoagland.
Yeah, and so I've talked about this with Ham, although Ham didn't quite understand what I was talking about. So as far as I understand, when it comes to evolution, or at least evolution being the explanation for how we came to being in the first place, abiogenesis is required. It's implied in evolution, and abiogenesis is staggeringly impossible from what I can understand. From what I understand of it, and yes, so amino acids would be the building blocks, but amino acids or RNA is composed of amino acids, and RNA is essentially uh, kind of like factories for your cells. They convert um, proteins into so amino acids are the building blocks for proteins. Proteins are chains of amino acids which compose RNA and DNA. And DNA has the ability to produce DNA or RNA, and RNA has the ability to produce RNA or protein structures, but RNA cannot reproduce DNA. So I mean, it's one of those weird things because I'm going through coding classes at the moment, and pretty intense training here, and it's one of those things in the back of my mind is kind of like
Let me put it this
this
way:
is what we're doing is pretty complex as far as coding goes, but it follows a very similar pattern to how our cells are constructed, because you've got these basic building blocks when it comes to coding. These are called primitives. You've got these basic building elements, and all the other complex things are made up of these simple these simple building blocks. Just it's kind of, so I guess it's similar to simple machines and complex machines, right? You've got your, I guess it would be easier analogy to explain things. You've got your planes and your levers and your wheels and your see, what is it? See, another simple machine. You've got plane, wheel. Oh, it's a wheel and axle, plane, lever, screw. Right? Those are the simple machines.
And wedge.
I,
And a wedge.
oh, and the wedge, yeah. And you combine them in different format or different variations, and you get these complex machines. And you get the pulley, and you get the well, you get an axe, and you get I mean, all these different combinations, and the number of combinations of mixing all these simple machines. There's a huge number of combinations that can make seemingly impossible tasks possible by leveraging.
Yeah.
However, however, there is a limit to how many different combinations will actually produce a positive result or a useful machine.
That's
There
why.
are an infinite number of possibilities, but the vast majority of those possibilities won't produce a machine that will actually help you achieve work, or will actually help you in in doing what you want to do.
Yeah, that's with the human body. That's why my
Yeah.
fiance and me are both looking at her new class, which is kinesiology,
Hmm.
because our body produces kinetic energy. Actually, that's how
Yeah.
we move our bones and
Mhm.
our joints
Hmm.
is through kinetic energy. Our body produces kinetic energy, actually.
Well, yeah. I mean, anything that moves produces kinetic energy.
Yes.
So our body converts calories into kinetic energy.
But yet a morbidly obese person who stores so much calories cannot use that kinetic energy.
Yeah, they've built up a bunch of potential energy that they're not having a easy time converting into kinetic.
Basically, they're basically an overgrown capacitor at this point.
Not capacitor. Battery would probably be a better term.
Yeah, battery.
Because a capacitor can release or can store and release large quantities of energy at once, whereas a battery has a controlled release.
Yeah.
It can only, that's why it takes batteries a long time to charge, and then a long time because they can only accept so much of a charge at a time, and they can only release so much at a time.
Thanks for the correction on that one.
Yeah, and that's why supercapacitors are kind of like the best of both worlds. Not only can they accept a large charge instantaneously or very, very rapidly, and they can release that large charge very rapidly, or they can release it incrementally. But that's kind of like the ultimate, because that's a whole nother subject, talking about batteries. I was just talking with the guys a couple of weeks ago, talking about graphene and how that is kind of first thing to do with graphene is water filtration, because that's would be extremely easy to do with mass produced graphene. Access to clean drinking water is a huge health problem for the majority of the world still. So that is something very, and if you screw up on making a water filter and you only get 99% of the whatever the stuff out of, or if you filter the water and it's most of the way filtered, nobody dies. If you create a water filter that doesn't actually filter and people drink it, yeah, you've got liabilities on your hand.
Oh yeah.
But if your water filter is at least as effective as a charcoal filter, which I don't see why it wouldn't be, then you're still doing a positive. It's still a net good.
Oh yeah.
If you screw up in creating a supercapacitor and explodes, yeah, you could the if you're so a water filter made out of graphene you could do in your garage. A supercapacitor battery that you either going to use in a cell phone or want to use in a car or something like that. That has the potential of of destroying your entire house, or
Or things that
it depends on how large of a supercapacitor you're building. But if you're talking about, well, if you overcharge it and it explodes, you're talking about lots
like
of damage.
how we were talking earlier about drugs, it's basically equivalent to a meth lab explosion.
Yeah, I don't know if it would be quite that large, but yeah, it could be if you're trying to build basically a car battery and you're using graphene as a supercapacitor. It has a potential to charge something like that. That the explosion could be similar to a meth lab. That's the scary thought.
You ever heard of the kid David Charles Hahn, the Boy Scout who built the nuclear reactor in his mom's backyard?
Wait, what?
Yeah, yeah. There was a story about a Boy Scout who actually built a nuclear reactor in his backyard.
What?
Yeah,
No way.
I'll send you a link to this. This is very interesting.
No way. Okay, I just typed in Boy Scout builds, and the nuclear reactor was one of the first thing that pops up. What? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's a completely separate. Uh,
But that's pretty funny when we're talking about building stuff that causes a house to explode. I'm like, that
yeah.
reminded me of that story about the kid who built the nuclear reactor in his mom's the Boy Scout who did that in his backyard.
Yeah. For the amount of graphene you would need for a supercapacitor is at least the supercapacitor to the point where it would actually be useful for charging a cell phone or as a replace even something the size of a stamp. That's a ton of graphene because you're talking about in order to be graphene, it has to be less than 11 atoms thick. So 11 atoms. I don't know if you've looked at a sheet of paper is. Oh, I used to know this off the top of my head. You're talking about hundreds of atoms in the thickness of a sheet of paper. So if you're talking about a battery that is about the size of a stamp and about the thickness of a, I'm not quite sure. Let's see, about the thickness of. It's a good example. Well, actually, just about the size of your SIM card. I don't know if you've seen a SIM card, right?
I'm gonna bring
Uh,
something up for you.
yeah,
Now we're talking
they're
about
pretty.
batteries, right?
What?
We're talking about how many atoms are in a battery.
No, I'm saying, yeah, with a graphene battery could replace your lithium battery, and it would be about the size of your SIM card. But the amount of graphene you would need to produce in order to make something even as small as the SIM card is it's a ton. It is a lot.
Oh yeah.
Like the amount of graphene you can produce regularly or consistently that is nowhere near the amount you would need in order to make a supercapacitor even the size of your SIM card. But to make something that could filter water um, as a graphene sheet wouldn't need to be as accurate, wouldn't need to be as, and it wouldn't need to be as much. But it would be, so that's one of the amazing properties of graphene, though. It is, if you could get a solid sheet of graphene, it would be the best water filtration system you could get because it's just the holes in the chemical. Chemical? No, it's not a chemical bond. It's the atomic bond. Because it forms a hex pattern, and the hex pattern, the hex size is just large enough to let H2O through, because oxygen is oxygen is the larger of the two atoms, and then hydrogen is very small. But most other molecules are not as small as hydrogen, and so a lot of other molecules will not fit through the holes that are in the structure of of graphene sheet. So it's one of these amazing properties where it's like, okay, hydrogen or 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen can fit through without issue, but you get any other molecule is going to be too big to fit through, and it's going to be an effective filter. And so at the end, you're going to get purified distilled water at the end. And all you have to do is use gravity, use a gravity filtration, and you can get pretty much all of your impurities out of it. So that is astonishing. If you can get it working. Sorry, that's a completely separate topic. I don't know. My mind always goes back to graphene because that's like, okay, as soon as I make my fortune, as soon as I get into that, so I'm going to start doing research into this, and this is priority number one. Because once you get that out of the way, and once you start, selling that as your business, is like, hey, I've got these cheap and effective filters, and you can distribute them around the world, solve these huge problems, and also put some coin in your bank, and then use that to fund other projects. At least that's how I see things going. Although that's the optimistic, idealistic viewpoint, which I should know better by now, because I had high hopes for my funfair endeavor, and now I'm in a boat where I can't do anything about it. Even though I wanted to do that, I had all the building blocks. I had the technology was in place. I had the know-how. I didn't have enough. I thought I had enough funding when I started. As it went on, I realized I didn't have enough funding to see it through to completion, and now I'm at a point where I've got to abandon it. I figured. So that's probably going to be me again in 10 years from now once I start trying to do graphene water filters. I'm like, oh, I've got all the components, I've got all the technology, and then funding's gone, and now I got to say goodbye to that dream too. That's going to be. Hope that isn't the case, but.
You want to get onto that subject about artificial intelligence, AI?
Okay.
Now,
yeah. So wait.
I always view artificial intelligence as a detriment to society.
And yes and no. There is a potential for it getting out of hand, although you would have to be someone who would be stupid enough to let it get out of hand would not be smart enough to develop an AI capable of it getting out of hand. That's what I'm like. I can't imagine someone being smart enough to create an AI and then giving it the ability to leave a controlled environment.
Let's put it this way: there's three famous AIs that were made by stupid people. HAL 3000, 2001.
That's fictional, man.
Yeah, from fictional AIs that show the dangers of AI, artificial intelligence. There's HAL 3000. There's Skynet. And a lot of people don't know about this one unless you play the games. The Patriot system from Metal Gear Solid.
And I would also throw in the androids from
iRobot.
No, iRobot was actually the opposite.
Oh yeah.
Which they butchered it in the Why? Why do they do this in movies?
Why? Because
the premise.
You get to know. They even butchered Patch Adams by saying his wife got shot, which she never did.
Oh, really? Yeah. So that part was completely made up?
Yeah, that part was made up. That had shock value.
Wow. I didn't think they would make that part. Yeah. Alright. But no, they butchered iRobot and completely changed the premise of it. They're like, the whole point was the robot was convicted and executed, although he didn't actually violate the rules. That's the original story. Well, the original story. Sorry, he wasn't actually executed. The original story, he was convicted, and while they were escorting him out, he sacrifices himself for a little girl.
Yeah, that was
That would be a much better movie, but they want to throw in their Hollywood endings, and it's like, oh, it's some AI that actually has gone corrupt. I'm like, no.
no. You took the story that was on the outer limit and raped it.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite stories from the Outer Limits. And when he had the remake of the relaunch of the series, and on Showtime, they brought it back with Leonard Nimoy in it, being the lawyer. Actually,
Did they actually do it justice, or did they do the?
they did it justice. They actually did the same ending, which was really good.
Yeah. Well, and they did the same thing with I Am Legend too, and you're like, no, that's not the story. You're doing it wrong.
Well,
The
they
entire purpose of that story was at the end, he is the monster. He's the monster they tell their kids about. He's the
yeah
boogeyman.
yeah the one with Steve McQueen did it pretty much justice. But the Will Smith one, I hated that one with a burning passion.
Oh, wait,
The
Steve
Omega,
McQueen was in one?
yeah,
I
the
know
Omega,
Charlton Heston was in one, the Omega Man, and I'm pretty
that's
sure they butchered that as well.
that's yeah, that one. And oh, Steve McQueen was in the Andromeda Strain.
Ah. Yeah, I just know in the Charlton Heston one, he's supposed to be the last man alive, and there's a scene close to the beginning. It's like within the first 10 minutes of the film, and he's driving around, and there's some guy walking around. Some extra got on set, and they didn't.
Yeah,
He's supposed to be the last man alive, and there's just some dude walking walking down the sidewalk.
yeah, I just
Wait
love
a
the
minute.
part. I love the part where he was playing chess with the bus. That was the best part.
Sorry, playing chess with what?
With the bust of William Shakespeare.
Uh,
I never really liked the Will Smith one. The Will Smith one butchered it, but at least they had the dog in it.
yeah. So that's two remakes that he has been in where they butchered the ending. All right, but let's get so back to AI. Okay. So all those fictional examples of AI gone bad, and yeah,
And my
but
thing is,
but
now,
Isaac Asimov in his story talked about the 3 rules of robotics, right?
yeah, and there is a zero law. Don't forget about that one.
Okay.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
can't. What is zero then?
The zeroth law. Okay, I'll bring that up actually on
Is
Google.
it can't change the rules?
No, this one was interesting. The zeroth law
Yeah.
in Asimov robotics laws.
Yeah, I don't. I'll have to look that up because I don't remember them off the top of my head.
I know I know the laws actually. The laws of robotics.
Let's see.
Yeah, there's the zeroth law basically, and nobody knows about the zeroth law. Okay.
Apparently, I can't spell Asimov.
All right. These are the first 3 laws. A robot may not injure a human being. This is the first law. A robot may not injure a human being or
Yeah.
through the action allow a human being come to harm.
Yeah.
Law number 2. A robot must obey orders given by its human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. Now I'm going to bring up the zeroth law.
Is it that they can't change the rules?
No, the zeroth law in robotics. Here it is, the zeroth law. And this was later on, actually.
Yeah, it was added after.
Yeah, a robot may not harm humanity or by inaction allow humanity to come to harm. Law 0.
But why would you need to add that if the first rule is in play?
Let me put it this way. There's a famous thing where the zeroth law comes into effect, and it's actually in a video game, actually. You ever played the game Mega Man?
Yes.
Remember, Dr. Wily always escaped and caused calamities.
Yeah.
What the thing is, if the world comes into harm, Mega Man was going to kill Wily. Actually,
Oh, okay. So a AI could violate the first three rules if humanity's was at stake. So if a human was threatening to destroy the world, then a robot could violate rule 1.
yeah, it is called the zero flaw.
Oh, but man, that creates a lot of other problems.
Yeah, and that's what I
'Cause-
think about with the AI is
oh,
because if artificial intelligence comes out of control, it would see us everyone that violates the zero flaw basically.
yeah, that is entirely subjective.
Yeah,
There is no, or at least there might, if there is an objective way to view that, it's very difficult for us to figure out what that would be. Because I mean, that's humanity is even struggling with that on their own, and trying to figure out, it's like, well, what actions can we not allow because it's going to destroy the entire planet? I mean, there's the discussion right now with Ocasio-Cortez saying the world's going to end in 12 years because of climate change, and then there's a bunch of people saying no, that's not a problem. What would an AI determine? Like, if you've got an AI who is able or capable of being smarter than the collective intelligence of every human on the planet, and if they determine Ocasio is correct, and they're like, well, since there's so many humans who oppose this, let's wipe them all out because that would be it's protecting us from violating Rule 0.
yeah,
And just like that, half of the United States gets wiped out because they're climate deniers, or if this AI views it the other way, they're like, oh nope, all these leftists are going to cause the death and destruction of humanity. Wipe them all out. That's
yeah. That's what I. That's the thing with
ooh.
robots actually that and artificial intelligence. And believe it or not, Japan is actually making robots that think for themselves.
Well, that's the thing I don't understand. Is if you create an AI, why would you give it? Yeah, yeah. So this is not just Japan, right? It was South Korea has um an automated machine gun. I don't know what it's exactly called, but it's an automated security drone mounted on a wall,
Yeah,
and any human, or I don't know if it any movement or motion, it just unloads on them.
yeah,
That doesn't, yeah, they're just told to stay away from that dividing line, and anybody who comes close enough to it, you're just it's just gonna target you and shoot you. Why would you do that? why,
yeah, yeah,
why would you give that? Hey, we created this AI, and let's just give it machine guns. Why
yeah.
would that be the? No, no, no.
Especially when the machine gun breaks down, the repairman has to come repair it and to get it working, and he crosses the
Ugh.
line of fire.
No, I am okay with AI within a controlled environment where, oh, it became self-aware and it's trying to end humanity, and oh, we gave it a printer. And that's all it had access to, is a printer.
Yeah,
Okay, oh, it's gonna maliciously type out a bunch of a bunch of paper.
yeah,
Oh well.
yeah.
I mean,
Now remember,
although okay,
and the thing is,
this
we
is
have
where you get into more sci-fi territory. Um, even with an AI that only has access to a display, like a computer monitor or a printer, this is, I don't know how possible this is, but our own brains work on electrical impulses, and similar to causing seizures by flashing lights, and theoretically a particular image, or maybe just lines of text or whatever in a specific pattern could trigger something in your brain that sets off an electrical signal. That, I mean, because our electrical circuits are ones and zeros. We operate on binary, which is the same thing as machine language. Um, It's just the way our brain is it's a trigger of electrical impulses or no electrical impulse. Is if there's an electrical impulse, it's the same as a oh yes, and if there's no electrical impulse, it's a no. And that's how our body communicates. And if an AI is able to figure out how our biology works, I mean, we don't understand totally exactly. We just know, I mean, we know the basics of it, but our understanding of our own biology. But if an AI is smart enough where it can keep advancing its own intelligence and keep figuring things out, and it can figure out exactly how the human mind works and how the human biology works, it could make a display that when you look at, like paralyzes you or causes your body to do something that you aren't in control of
or
because they're
or we could go into the sci-fi
Ooh.
territory, or we could go into science fiction territory. The Metal Gear series with the nanomachines controlling the human body.
Oh,
Sure,
well, that's the nanomachines, dude. As soon as you start talking about nanomachines, man, you don't give that AI. You don't give that. No, nanomachines is where I say, nope, I'm out. I'm
no,
out.
no, never nanomachines.
It's a nice idea of having nanomachines. I, but there's too much. That's where I say no. I mean, similar with the what like injecting things under your skin. Because there's people talking about that, and I'm like, dude, you guys are out of your mind.
Or splicing animal DNA within your body.
Yeah, I mean,
God damn.
robotic prosthetics and stuff, okay.
Yeah,
But the second you start injecting computer programs and whatever into your skin or computer chips or like dude, that's over the line. That's
especially one day you know that I'm always afraid that the radical SJWs are going to start injecting chips at us, and if we don't agree with them, all they have to do is press a
oh dude,
button.
that's
We
where things are
explode.
going.
We
I
explode
mean,
like
what is that?
suicide squad.
China's got that program where it's basically you have a social media score, and if your social media score goes below a certain number, then businesses are not allowed to work with you, and you're not allowed to. I mean, you basically get ostracized based on your activity on a social media site.
Oh my god!
That's what they're going towards, and you're like, yeah. They take that one step further, and they're like, okay, well, you can't pay for anything because you've got a negative social media, and you're just ostracized, and you're like, oh, everybody's using this payment system, and it's embedded in your skin,
Or the
and oh,
worst, or the
we
worst,
determined that you're one of the bad actors, so you can't pay for anything now.
or the
Fun.
worst part, or the worst part, the chip has that explosive device in it, and they just press a button, your head explodes like in Suicide Squad.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, so I don't know if, yeah, I don't know where you stand on religion and all that sort of thing, but this is that's the stuff that I grew up being told about and like fear mongering. I was like, oh, yep, the mark of the beast on the back of your hand and on your forehead.
Well, I would say,
And
if you want to know my stance on religion, I'll say this. I view religion as something of a good and a bad. It's good for people like addicts because it's some way of them staying off the addictive substance. Like, you heard of Alcoholics Anonymous?
sorry, what?
You heard of Alcoholics Anonymous?
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
believe,
Well, there's a bunch of different anonymouses, but yeah.
yeah, I believe AA uses religion in a positive manner of them staying off the drink by finding a higher power. And I've seen a lot of people. Now there is. I'm going to say it's not always good, but it's also there's a lot of people who benefit off of it because they go to church and stuff. Stay off of alcohol, which I don't really get on people's cases about. If religion is helping you get better, then that's good for you. Me, religion is. I say this: find out what religion is best for you.
Mm, I, I can't agree with that because there's the truth, and I reject any type of religion that doesn't follow the truth or doesn't at least gives up on searching for the truth, and that's so.
Believe
I've
me,
gone on record talking about this, and I
believe
still stick by this. Although I am still like I'm not a good example of my particular religion. I'm a pretty poor example of it, and
Well,
then again, I am fairly new in it,
you mean
and I am studying and I'm trying to be better at it. But uh, so I am a Jehovah's Witness, at least, and I've been going to those for about a year, doing Bible studies and that sort of thing. So yeah, for anybody listening, hopefully that doesn't turn you off and you're like, oh, not talking to him anymore. What I like about them is every time I've talked to them, anytime I've had a Bible study, they are always talking about pursuing the truth. And it's like, okay, is what we're teaching people, does it line up with what we know about the way the world actually works? Does it line up with what the scriptures are saying? And are the scriptures accurate? Do we have the correct translations of them? Are we using, there's multiple ways that they vet what they're teaching, which I think is absolutely amazing. And as soon as I find me something that the Jehovah's Witnesses believe or have been teaching is inaccurate or is scientifically disprovable, or I will be right there saying, okay,
Yeah.
I thought it was correct, but maybe it's not.
believe
But
me,
as far as I've seen, everything that anybody who's said, oh, I used to be one of them and now I'm not, I haven't heard any good explanation of why they aren't anymore.
you
They
mean
just
I'm gonna be honest. I'm a Buddhist and a Wiccan, so
okay.
I call myself a Jedi. Basically, I find balance in everything. I believe there's the good and the bad in things. That's with AI. I believe there's good with AI, but there's more bad with AI as well. I try to find a great balance.
Yeah. So I think with AI, we can contain it within an environment where it can't do anything, because we could. I mean, basically, this is something we've been using in computer. With like, this is why you have virtual machines, right? I don't know if
Yeah,
you're talking about your computer environment. You've got virtual computers, and so this is something we do with viruses and malicious software. You run everything inside of a virtual machine, and the virus and software, whatever, the malicious software can't get out of that virtual environment, and then you just delete the virtual environment, and virus is gone. It doesn't affect your actual hardware. It doesn't affect your actual computer. It's contained in a subset. And if you've got an AI, it doesn't matter if it becomes self-aware and wants to kill all humans. If it's contained in a virtual environment like that, it can't do anything.
yeah.
That's if you're going to develop an AI, you do it in a virtual environment. You do it in something where no matter what it does, it can't escape this. It can run all the stuff, but it's not a real environment. It's not the real hardware. It's not going to really destroy anything. It's not going to get outside of this container, no matter what it does, because um, it's not something it can outsmart. It's not something. Oh well, if I just figure out how this exploit, there's nothing to exploit. It's blocked in.
Yeah.
Um,
The one thing
similar to
I think AI would benefit is people who lost their arms with cybernetics, with prosthetics. If we can find a way to contain that AI and find a way to make it incorporate with the human brain and make their arms move.
Yeah, right there. I'm like, nope, not
Yeah,
not having any.
that sounds like something in fantasy land.
No, it's that's where you get to the point of who is in control, you or the AI. And anytime there's a conflict, you would want to be like, this is my personal, like, if it's between me and me being in full control or me being in partial control, I I I want the full control. I'd rather be in full control and have it be to my detriment than be in partial control. And it's just
Sort of like I call that.
that's why I don't do drugs and I don't smoke and I don't drink. I don't do anything like that. It's because
I call that the.
I don't. Yeah.
I'll say that I named that myself. The whole thing of who is in control, the man or machine, the Alex Murphy theory.
Yeah.
RoboCop.
Yeah.
Is RoboCop a man or a machine?
He's a combination of both, and actually that was part of the.
That's why I love that movie.
Yeah. Part of the, like, a really good part of the actual themes that it was addressing. was he was following programming and he couldn't do certain actions even though they were the right thing to do.
And he
And
had
that's
his
what you
own,
would,
and he had his own fucked up flaw of robotics, which was the whole
yeah, can't attack an employee or can't do anything about an employee of the
no,
company.
no, it's all to protect the citizens and stuff. And then there's his zero flaw, which is Directive 4, actually.
Yeah, it. And again, that's another movie where they butchered it in the remake. What
Yeah,
wrong?
I hate that butchering. They raped the franchise with that.
Ah,
But actually, I'm glad that the guy who originally created RoboCop is coming back, actually, doing a better RoboCop.
mm, uh, I think they should just leave it where it was and not try. It's just not. Just let us have the '80s versions because
Yeah,
those ones were good.
and the TV show and Alpha.
TV show.
Yeah,
Wait, there was an album? Wait, what?
there was a RoboCop TV show, actually. It only ran for
That's
one.
yeah, that sounds absolutely terrible.
It
But
was.
I guess it's not as bad as the remake movie. Man,
Yeah, it was not that bad actually. They had like an episode with Alex Murphy with Officer Murphy's mother and father, and his father was a cop, and he found out who he was, and he was still proud of him.
hmm.
Yeah,
Eh.
I'll link you to the source of that because I watch a lot of RoboCop. RoboCop's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, like RoboCop 1 and 2, really good movies. RoboCop 3, not so much.
The remake,
RoboCop the remake, no, that movie doesn't exist. It should not. It burn it with fire.
just like the 2016 Ghostbusters.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, there was a
So,
RoboCop.
yeah, but as far as I'm concerned, I want to be in full control of my actions, even if that means that I'm going to make a worse choice or not be as fast or not be as smart as I should be or as I could be otherwise. Like, and there's, what the Ex Machina or what, no, it's Deus Ex. That's the name of the video game franchise that kind of deals with that um, not theme. What's the word I'm looking for here? That subject matter.
Yeah, here I sent
Yeah.
you links of the
Uh,
RoboCop TV show with David Hoff that was filmed in Canada, as well as in the 80s we had RoboCop and the Ultra Police, the animated series. Back when RoboCop first came out, it's like,
well, that's when they were turning everything that was a hit in cinemas into a TV show.
yeah, but it was
Because
pretty.
I mean, they made Ghostbusters. Well, that was really a decent TV show.
Yeah, it was only 12 episodes, and the last episode had Clarence Boddicker return for some odd reason.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh, okay. So, and Kappa Kitty did mention something about AI. So, okay, yeah, but AA does have her themes, and it's one of the that's what. And whether you agree with the religion as a whole or not, I don't think anybody can actually contest how effective AA and similar programs are. Given their results, it compared to other groups or other types of therapy to deal with people's alcoholism. AA has the best results out of any other
oh,
similar
yeah.
project, and they've
I believe,
tried to make versions of it without appealing to a higher authority or without any of the religious subtext, and it's just not as effective.
yeah,
And I think that's
sure, and sure, I always view it as a placebo effect, but it has a great result at the same time. And I can't bash a person for trying to get better because me, a person who suffers mental illness, my goal is to get better, and who's right to judge on how they get better versus my way of getting better?
all right. And so I think we'll
And that's
kind
where
of
my,
start to wrap this up.
and
Although,
that's
I
where my
mean, we've
Buddhist.
just kind of been all over the place on our subjects,
Yeah,
and we haven't really gotten anywhere. But it's interesting stuff to think about.
yeah, I
So
believe in
hopefully
that.
we'll,
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll definitely do this again.
yeah. So thank you for being courteous, and I know last time you were talking in the comments, I was trying to send you the link, although apparently I'd set up the Hangout incorrectly and kept
Yeah.
sending you the link to the video where it was being presented as opposed to where you could actually join the Hangout. Sorry about that confusion. So
Hey,
I'm glad you
hey,
wanted to talk about something other than that today.
humane. We're only human, okay? So
All right.
yeah.
So, but I
Well,
do differ with you on when it comes to religion because I actually think that there is a deity, and so I'm
I,
not sure if we talked about this before, but there was a while there
I'll tell you,
when I
humane.
was in my hmm?
I believe in a deity too. I believe in Buddha.
Well, okay. Do you
I'm a
think?
Buddhist. I'm basically a Buddhist most of the time.
But Buddha didn't. Buddha wasn't a deity.
Well,
From everything I've studied about Buddhism, Buddha was not a deity. He was a regular human, and Buddhists believe in reincarnation. And that's what.
I don't believe in the reincarnation part. I more believe in the philosophy of Buddha. The whole thing of
Yeah,
having
but that was
balance.
the entire reason why he was kind of um the ideal archetype for Buddhism is that was supposed to be the example that people follow in order to move on to higher planes of existence. At least that was my understanding of it.
My,
Maybe I don't understand it correctly, but
well,
I guess
I'll tell you this. I don't follow the whole thing about reincarnation and stuff. The main
yeah.
thing,
No, it's also a little bit weird where you say you're a Buddhist and a Wiccan. So I
Wiccan,
don't.
because I'll tell you why I'm Wiccan, because my fiance is Wiccan, and it has a lot of similarities with finding inner peace with yourself. Of course, there's a whole thing about spell casting and stuff, which I will never touch.
Yeah.
But my thing with
Okay.
I take the main things I take it from my religion, Buddhism, mostly is the way to how to better my life. Like, never jump to conclusions. Always find a inner balance and peace with yourself. Never judge a person for what they say or what they do,
What?
because then you'll be judged as well. And the wicked part is the karma effect. Like, everything you've done in your life, you'll get back 3 times fold. Yeah, of course, I'm sounding like a madman scribbling on the walls with my own fecal matter, but it helps my life be better.
I guess. Although some of those sentiments are from the Bible as well. Um,
And
judge not lest ye be judged, and then
and
you
believe
reap
me,
what you sow, and then so I mean but I mean there's also a lot of these are paralleled in other religions as well. It's not just
yeah.
exclusive to Christianity, so
And
they seem to be universal themes.
you have to know,
Um,
Humane. I was actually, you have to know, with the Catholic, I used to be Catholic until my mom and me, my brother and sister were, extradited because my mom got a divorce. So I found my own way of balancing myself, and I followed books of Buddhism.
okay, and I if that works for you, I don't see any validity or truth or usefulness to such to that particular way of viewing the world.
And
But
Humane,
then again,
only been
I might be wrong, and I have been wrong in the past, so I could be wrong about what my current perspective is. So, but
I'm going to be
I
honest with you. If what you're going, if you're becoming a Jehovah's Witness, if that's to better yourself,
not becoming, I am one.
if you are a Jehovah's Witness and that's a way for you to better yourself, go for it.
Yep. As far as I know, it's from what I've encountered, and like I said, I've only been doing this about a year and a half. everything that I've seen so far lines up with what I know about the universe, with what I know about the way facts work, with what I know about logic and reasoning. They actively encourage people to study what they're teaching, which is a breath of fresh air compared to other stuff where I did do Bible studies with Mormons, and what they were telling me was to pray that that what we're teaching you is the truth. And I was like, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
You don't say, I please teach me that this is the truth, because what if it's a lie? You're asking to be lied to. I told them that to their faces. Like, you guys just told me to pray that this was the truth, not that I would find the truth. And they're like, yeah, that's what we were told. And I'm like, you guys are out of your minds. That's like saying it's eating dirt and saying, well, I pray that this will nourish my body, or that this will be food once it hits my. You're like, no, it's not. You can't change reality based on what you want to think. That's asking to be lied to or to be deluded.
Oh, yeah.
That's not something you like. I'm actively seeking the truth. I want to make sure that everything I do lines up with the truth, and anything that I find that contradicts that, I got to change my view of the world based on what I find to be true. So
And HUMANe, I'm going to be
that's
honest with you. I'm going to give you
mhm.
a quote of positivity about yourself. HUMANe, you are a brilliant, intelligent person, and you can pass your knowledge to on others to enlighten them. Don't ever knock
I try
yourself
to do.
down. Don't ever knock yourself down. And if a person doesn't listen, try to talk to them and understand where they're coming from. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Sometimes that will help. An old philosophy I always go by is catch more flies with honey than vinegar.
Well, um, yeah, that's something like I said. That's why I named my screen name is the Humane Mind, and that's maybe I should have made it the other way around. Maybe I should have said mindful human or humane or something like that.
Yeah, and me, the conundrum.
But
I'm
that's
like,
using it for several years.
yeah, my name is
Because
conundrum.
the humane part is what I struggle with the most.
Yeah, and mine, the
That it's the ideal of what I'm trying to embody rather than what I am.
and me with being the conundrum. My goal is to prove that everybody's a walking conundrum.
No, I'm trying to get rid of all of that. I'm trying to be as least hypocritical as possible, as adherent to the truth as possible.
Let me put it this way.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
I don't want to be a conundrum. I'm trying. If I am a conundrum, I want that to stop.
but sometimes, HUMANE, I'll be honest, hypocrisy never. There's an old saying I know is hypocrisy never makes you. You're not wrong to be a hypocrite. Everybody's a
Yes, you
hypocrite.
are.
Let me put it this way. I'll be honest. I'm a hypocrite because I tell people not to smoke, but I smoke because I don't want people to get the addiction of smoking.
Well,
Yes,
that's
it is. I am being a hypocrite, but actually, I'm a hypocrite in the right reason.
mm,
Even though it's wrong,
it's
I'm teaching people not to go down the path I went
well.
down.
Okay, I don't want to get into a whole new. But if you actually believe something is good to do, then you would do it. Like, I don't tell people to invest in Bitcoin and then not invest in Bitcoin myself. I don't tell people,
To go.
I don't tell people to, I see, trying to think of something.
Here's one. Here's one.
Anything that I would recommend to somebody, it's something that I'm already doing.
Yeah.
Or anything that I would say, hey, you probably shouldn't do that, it's something that I'm already not doing.
Yeah. Here's one.
I
Here's a great
the
one.
whole
Subscribe to Dollar Shave Club, even though I'm not subscribed to it. Or hey,
yeah,
go to
that's
BetterHelp, or go to BetterHelp, even though I don't do it.
yeah, I don't understand why people would do that. That to me, that makes no sense whatsoever. Anything that I advocate for, anything I recommend, it's stuff that I'm actively using. Anything that it's so when I say, hey, check out Mike Cernovich's film, while I haven't seen the full version of it, I have seen the 80% cut.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, hey, you should check this out because I've seen it and it's really good. Uh,
Mhm.
and that's in like I follow Stefan Monalou pretty regularly. I follow Tom Woods pretty regularly. I highly recommend them. Anything that you can get your hands on concerning Thomas Sowell. Like, these are profound thinkers, and even if you don't agree with everything they said, anything they say or write, at least you start to think about the world differently. Like, okay, maybe some of the things I've held as truth aren't really. And you start to think about the world differently because of what they've said, even if you don't entirely agree with them.
Yeah.
It'll help you come closer to the truth, and that's why I recommend them.
That's why I believe.
I'd also recommend reading some of Sam Harris's work, because I highly disagree with pretty much like 99% of things Sam Harris says. But I found in reading them, they help me solidify my own perspectives and be like, okay, yeah, I don't agree with this completely. I don't agree with this at all, and here's the reasons why. And I can actually solidify my positions against what he has stated, which is something. He didn't change my mind. He didn't convince me to think about the world differently, but he did solidify me in my own beliefs. Like, okay, if this is the opposition, I now know I'm now more confident in my current views and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
Thing is, I believe in this whole thing is of. Let me think of what I always believe in. I believe in don't I don't buy I don't I want if you sorry I'm getting that
that's all right.
tongue tied. I believe in if you break my trust, you have to earn it back. Don't buy it back from me because I'm not a whore.
Well, if your trust can be bought, then it's not
Yeah,
it's not really worth earning.
yeah. I always tell people don't try to buy me off. I ain't no whore.
But yeah, I disagree with your sentiment about everybody being a hypocrite, because I'm trying to be the least hypocritical as possible. And
Let me
anything that I advocate for, anything I say, hey, this is the right thing, this is what I found. Like, so that's why I'm like, okay. Even though I started doing Bible studies with the Jehovah's Witness, I'm like, okay, this is as close to the truth as I think I've ever found, and that's why I go around and I go out with them in my full suit and knock on people's door and try to invite them to the meetings and say, hey, that I practice what I preach.
I'm going to say this. At one point in your life, everybody's hypocritical at one point in their life. It's perfectly normal. It's the same thing with failing. Everybody fails in life. But what we take from these failures, we use it to strengthen ourselves for the next time.
And you apply that to being a hypocrite. You first have to understand, oh, I was being hypocritical there, and then you stop being a hypocrite there.
Yeah, same thing. That's the same thing.
You realized, oh, that was a failing on my part. Learn from it, improve, get better, try not to do it again. That's
like one thing that everybody has in their life is pride. We're all prideful. Sometimes we have to eat that pride because if we swallow our pride, it's the most nourishing meal ever, in my sense. That's the whole thing of humble pie. It's not wrong. Right. It's not wrong to swallow your pride once in a while.
All right, and it is getting on to almost 11 o'clock, and I do have class in the morning, so I'm going to call it a night here. Well, thank you very much for joining me. As hopefully this was somewhat entertaining for anybody who stuck around for the full time.
And kept getting
technical difficulties and all that, but hopefully it was. And I will try to do this again next Wednesday, and I may or may not have a guest. And thank you for the new subscribers, because I saw that my subscriber count went up. And next week, I don't know if I had something planned, and I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. But we'll see if things change based on what events have been going on in the news. And thank you very much for joining me, Conundrum, and hopefully this has been somewhat interesting for anybody else listening.
Oh, yeah.
All right, and see you guys next week.